وبشر المؤمنين بأن لهم من الله فضلا كبيرا.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alhamdulillah, we are back again. Glad Tidings podcast, and we have our special guest, episode number 2 with him, Akhi Dino. Alhamdulillah, I missed the last one, but Hassan and Salahuddin was there. We don't need much of an introduction, but just to let the people know, Alhamdulillah, Brother Dino, Allahumma barik, is an entrepreneur. He's currently residing in the UAE, and he uses social media platforms to inspire, motivate the youth, alhamdulillah. And many people have benefited, even myself, alhamdulillah. I came across you not too long ago, before we even did this podcast. So when Salahuddin came and said, we got you on a podcast, alhamdulillah, I was very happy. So I'm really looking forward to it. And mashallah, Hassan has said a few things about you as well. So let's see what happens, inshallah. Do you want to kick it off, Hassan?
Yeah, just the first thing I was going to ask is basically, so in terms of like ambition and, you know, Muslims pursuing goals and stuff, why do you think there's like a pandemic? Maybe I don't use that word of Muslims.
Be careful.
round two in the wrong way. But like where Muslims, they don't have like any ambition. You know, they a lot of people say, okay, they talk, I want to be this, and I want to be that, I want to be a millionaire, I want to drive here, and I want to live here, but they don't actually have any like proper ambitions, like, you know, a plan, or because everybody says, I want to be rich and I want to, you know, live in Medina, and I want to pray I want to just retire at the age of 30 or 40.
Yeah.
But you ask them, how you can do it? I don't know. You know, as if they're waiting for some sort of, you know, inspiration to come down.
Yeah.
In a way, obviously, you're not obviously in that sense, but why do you think that is?
It is a loaded question. But are you specifically referring to the younger generation?
Actually, when you maybe people in their 30s as well, up to that age.
Because I feel like nowadays the younger generation and the older generation, they live completely different realities.
Yeah.
Right? The answers are completely different.
Yeah.
But in terms of the older generation, I think the older generation had more ambition, in my opinion.
I agree with you.
Because the reason being is like unidirectional, right? So it's only one direction. Whereas if you talk to a young kid, most of my demographic or most people I speak to are young, below 25, right?
Okay.
And it boils down to information overload. So if you're a young kid and you're on the internet and you're just scrolling, you have ambition.
Yeah.
You tell yourself, I want to make a lot of money and I can leave the country. The moment you get on the internet, you're actually bombarded with a lot of information. So the byproduct of that is it paralyzes you. So most kids you see nowadays, it's not that they don't have ambition. It is because of the amount of information they've got, it just creates confliction in their mind. Like, for example, you just asked me about crypto before we started this, right?
That's right.
What actually piqued your interest about crypto?
Just because a lot of people are earning a lot of money about it.
But imagine that times like 100 for a young person that is chronically online. Every young person that is on the internet, right?
Yeah.
They're just scrolling. One guy says, I've got an agency, I help businesses. The other guy says, I've got some sort of crypto or forex thing. The other guy says, I've got a sales company. And it's just so much information overload that it paralyzes the young person. So the advice that I always give people to counter all of that is genuinely just sit down with yourself and focus on what you feel like you're inclined towards. So let's say like you finish school and you really like maths, or you really like English, or you really like science.
Okay.
Something along those lines to follow. So I always tell people to get into one vehicle, make sure that vehicle actually has longevity, not something like forex or crypto, as I mentioned to you, where the markets are heavily manipulated and you will never actually be able to beat the markets, if that makes sense. Rather, just learn something that has longevity. So say, for example, you want to become an electrician. Very valid, by the way. I would say go learn the trade, become an electrician, but think long term. Don't get trapped into the employee mindset and say, I just want to work, earn my money, come home and relax, watch Netflix with my wife, right? Instead, think to yourself, the skill set that I have, how can I build on it and solve problems in the market? And that is pretty much the formula. So to go back to your question, most young people, because of the overload of information, when they actually sit down with themselves and just pick one vehicle and just tunnel vision and don't look left or right, you would actually get further that way. And I'm speaking from experience because I used to do that. I dropped out of uni in 2020.
Okay.
Parents weren't happy with it.
Yeah, understandably.
I tried everything under the sun.
Okay.
Everything, crypto, social media marketing agency, copywriting, like all of these things I've tried. And I never actually got anywhere because whilst I was doing something, instead of putting my full focus into it, I'm thinking about something else at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like 60% of my effort is in this,
Okay.
30% is in crypto, and 10% is starting some other new hustle. Okay. And that diverted attention never gets you anywhere. So to kind of summarize my point, you have to have focus on one thing and just put your whole heart into it. And then once you get results from it, build on that thing only, not other things, because those things would just spread you thin and you wouldn't get anywhere.
Another question from that when you were saying, find out, because sometimes for people to get to that stage where they say, I don't know what I'm good at. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I'm good at. Nobody's ever told me. Because people have like obviously I think maybe from the social media side of things, people have got a lot of low self-esteem, a lot of low confidence. So they say, I'm not good at anything.
Yeah.
I literally don't know which direction to go in because I don't know where to start. What would you say to that person?
I don't believe anyone knows what they're good at. Neither did I. Like anything that I do right now, whether it's content creation, where you guys have seen me at, I never knew I was good at it.
Okay.
But it's through taking action and trying it out, then you get a result out of it, right? And I think if you look at most young people nowadays, they're very risk averse. They don't want to take risks.
100%.
They don't want to try something new that gets them out of their comfort zone. And that's the only way to see if you're good at something or not, right? Any skill, like you for me, if I ever sat here and said I don't really know what I'm good at, it's because you don't do anything.
Okay.
Right? And even passion, the concept of passion as well. You're not really born with passion. I don't know. I think movies maybe propagate this idea where they say you're born as if it's a revelation, right?
Yeah.
The reality is passion comes after competency. You have to become good at something and then you're like, oh, I'm really good at this thing. Now I'm passionate about this thing, right? And then it becomes your life mission. Yeah. But to start from the beginning, you have to actually start something, see whether you get results from it or not. And then if you do get results from it, then kind of double down on that. And then that's what you are good at. Okay. So it's mainly uncovering. But that uncovering means that you have to take risks. And being risk averse summarizes the younger generation.
Okay. And also, two more things I was going to ask as well is basically, how do you know that this thing that you've put all your energy and effort in is something that you should go for? You know what I'm trying to say? When people are like, okay, maybe you haven't tried hard enough or you haven't put all your effort in. How do they know, okay, once you put all your effort in, what's the time scale that you should wait before you're like, okay, this is actually not for me. I've put everything I can into it. Like you said, you've done like copywriting and this, that and the other, and you tried everything. So how did you know this is, okay, I've done this, it's not for me? And do you know what I'm trying to say? How do you move on from that and actually start something else?
Yeah. I think the better question you have to ask yourself is, did you actually try? Because I don't think people genuinely try. At the first hurdle of like friction or some sort of pushback against what it is that you're doing, people usually give up, right?
Okay.
So there's a concept called like the valley of despair. So when people start something, they have optimism.
Yeah.
They have that motivation, that drive.
Yeah, 100%.
But then you fastly get into the valley of despair, right?
Okay.
You get into the area where you're not getting any results, but you're putting energy in, you're putting effort in.
Okay.
That area is where you should actually be continuing, because for most people, let's say you start something today, a business today, you're making no money at all, but you're really putting your effort in every single day. Effort. Maybe after 6 to 12 months, if you've really been putting effort in, at the end of those 12 months, you can then look back and say, you know what? Where have I gotten? What milestones have I reached? But then that's a complete different. I think if you were to look at the percentage, I think 85% of people genuinely just give up when they feel a bit of friction. And then you get the whole shiny object syndrome thing where if you feel like what you're doing right now isn't really working for you because you're not trying hard enough, you just go on to the next thing and you tell your mates about it. I'm going to try this new business, or I'm going to take this new course or boot camp. And in reality, it doesn't work out. So the real question you have to ask in that context is, am I really trying? And coupled with that is, if you are trying, are you actually analyzing what it is that you're doing? Because a smart person is the one that says, you know what, I've tried this for 3 months. It didn't really work out. Instead of throwing that away, let me figure out how can I actually refine this, right? So the concept that I usually teach people most is, like, for example, if you told me you were doing sales for like 2 years, right?
Okay.
Didn't really get any results like that. My honest advice is to continue, because imagine you've gotten like 60% of the way. You just need that last 40%. If you're willing to throw that away, that means you would have to go from 60% back to 0%, just back to 60% again.
Okay, yeah.
And that time, actually, the amount of time that elapses is way longer than you just continuing. So most people, I tell them, you actually try. And surprisingly, they would say no.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah.
And also, you mentioned about, you know, coming out the rat, like the situation of, you know, always being someone's employee.
Yeah.
Do you think that's always a negative thing?
No, because I'm an employee right now.
Okay. Is that obviously? I'm guessing that's not obviously not your long term
No.
goal. Because my main question, maybe to rephrase it, is: do you think everyone's got the ability to be an employer, and not just always be an employee? Because most people nowadays, they're all employees, but everybody wants to be an entrepreneur and run this and run that.
Yeah.
I think people lack the drive and the motivation. Also, maybe the understanding of how business actually works.
Yeah, I think the young people are genuinely in trouble because you guys have heard the whole concept of the rat race or the matrix, right? It's been tokenized by Andrew Tate and his the byproducts of him. But one thing that I know for sure is being employed teaches you the skills you need to work in an operation. So once you get out of the operation, you know how to run your operation because you used to be an employee, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And a lot of people don't understand that. Most people that are really successful, right? Unless you've built a unicorn business that just came out of the blue, that was pioneering, right? Like Microsoft or something. The reality is, all of them have worked the actual job, whether it was a high-level corporate job or some level of employment.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Only the new generation have pushed this instant gratification kind of thing of I worked 6 months and I made 100 mil and I bought this Lambo and I got this house in the driveway. And the disparity between old money and this new quick online money is crazy, because if you talk to an old person, which is why my advice always is, whether it is to do with Islam, money, mental health, mindset, whatever it is, talk to an older person.
I agree with you.
Because an older person is detached from materialism. Most young people, if you genuinely talk to them, they would dig you more of a hole, right? So even in terms of money, right? If you talk to an older person and you say, how do I build my wealth? Or what do I do? He'll tell you, okay, what skills do you have? If you say nothing, he'll be like, go get employed. Work under organization. Whether it is carpentry, electrician, sales, software development, whatever it may be, right? Work under organization. Learn the skill sets that are required to be an employee. So when you become an employer, you know what it's like to hire an employee, and you're more empathetic, right? You sympathize, you understand these people more.
That's right.
Whereas if you look on the internet now, what do people do instead? They bash people that work 9 to 5. The empathy and the kindness has gone out of the window. They're like, what's wrong with you? How can you settle for working for a boss? I could never have a boss. Someone even went as far as saying, oh, people that work 9 to 5 don't even get time to go Jummah. Like, it's gone so far and it's blown out of proportion. It doesn't affect me. I've kind of lived outside of the social media realm. But imagine if you guys have kids, imagine your 15, 16-year-old kid that's watching this. They are the ones that are being destroyed as a byproduct. Because I've got a 19-year-old brother. Sometimes when he talks to me, like, I don't want to work. Why do I don't want to be employed. I don't want to have a boss. You're 19 years old. What are you going to do instead, right? So to kind of answer your question, I feel like most times that whole notion and all of that's propagated is always at a byproduct or someone's trying to sell something to someone. That's how it usually works. But if you get a neutral opinion on it, they will always tell you, go work so you can understand what it's like to work. So then you can then have ideas that develop based on the skills that you're nurturing, and then go out there and then start something for yourself.
That's an amazing point. And what you touched on about old money and new money. Also, like a lot of the old money, they look down upon new money because it does come quick. You know, for like whatever people doing forex, which is obviously haram. I haven't heard any opinions opposite to it, and other stuff like that. It just comes in really like thousands, like tens of thousands come quickly. But that means it's going to go faster as well. You know, as with old money, sometimes it's generational. So they've built up on that. You know, their father or their grandfather set up a business, and they've, you know, been an employee. So they've worked within that company structure. So they know how to retain that money as well as build upon that. So yeah, mashallah, that was a good point.
And you see a lot with the youth, subhanallah, that even I've got a little brother who's going to turn 16 soon, and he has one of his friends, and his friends is similar. He's doing like, he's trying to rent properties. He's like young, he's like 16, 17, and he's in the crypto. And then that whole thing, when that thing came out, what was it called again? Them little picture things.
NFTs.
Yeah, NFTs, and they blew up. Everyone was jumping on that hype, subhanallah. And now look, a couple of years later, it's completely gone now. So I see it with my little brother right now. He wants to make money. He wants to do this. He wants to do that. But then when, in terms of education, it's just stuck. Like, he's not focusing on the main thing. and that's your bread and butter at the beginning, and of course you can branch out later. But moving on from that, inshallah, I was going to ask you, what do you think, how important do you think the role of Islamic teachings is when it comes to a Muslim's ambition? Because Islam it should be everything for us. So how does that tie in with the actual ambition of a believer?
Yeah, that's very true. I'm not a student of knowledge, by the way, just to clarify. But in terms of Islamic teachings, I feel like what Islam has done for me, if I was to make it more personal, is the concept of qadr does a lot for me. So I think for Muslims, the reason why, even if you look at what's going on in Palestine right now, the reason why some white people may wonder how these people are so strong after what's happening, the concept of qadr generally helps you. And in terms of ambition and aspiration, it doesn't, like, as if you're someone that's working hard, if you're someone that's putting all the hours in, you do also understand that qadr is the ultimate factor, right?
Yeah.
If something's written for you, it's written for you. If not, it's not. And that kind of gives you peace of mind. It gets rid of the anxiety feeling. Because imagine you're working hard every single day and you just don't know whether it's going to work or not. But then as a Muslim, you understand that whatever Allah gives you, it was meant for you, and that is the right outcome. So in terms of ambition, I do feel like the tawakkul and the qadr aspect helps a lot of Muslims, especially the ones that are really grounded. And to stay away from like riba and haram and all of these things. So Islamic teachings, definitely the concept of qadr has helped me a lot. Like if I was to go through some tumultuous or bad period right now, the reality is it doesn't affect me as much. Because I know, you know what, it may hurt in the moment, but it was written. It wasn't meant to be. And that gives you peace. Like, it gives you so much peace. Right now, definitely. If I get hit with, I don't know, a 10 grand fine, I'm like, oh, I paid 10 grand. But the reality is, deep down, I know, you know what, qadr, written. And that's what my mum always used to tell me. Every time I used to go vent to my mum and complain to my mum about something, she always used to be like, you know what, it's qadr, it was written. Is what it is. So I think that aspect of Islam helps a lot, especially with ambition. Because, for example, even if you fail an exam or you really wanted to get into a certain course or university and it didn't work out, if you're not a Muslim, it hurts, bro. It hurts. Like, you're there sitting there thinking, why? I worked my socks off every single day. But as a Muslim, it hurts, but you're like, you know what, deep down you're like, it wasn't written. Maybe something bad was going to come out of it. And that gives you the peaceful feeling.
Bro, when you're saying that right now, subhanAllah, it reminds me to maybe like a few years ago, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And I was going through a difficult time, like all of us go through ups and downs. And I remember reading this one hadith. And this one hadith literally changed my life. I probably read it a few times before, but it doesn't really sink until you're going through a particular situation. And it's part of a longer narration, but the Prophet ﷺ said, nothing is decreed for a believer except there's khair in it. And when I heard that hadith, my mind was blown because it made me really understand that, first of all, how blessed we are. The fact that we're believers, but no matter what happens in your life, the good, the bad, the ups, the downs, the tribulations, there's always khair in it. And we may not see it in that moment. But same thing when you apply it to business, ambition. You know, we are taught in Islam, of course, to have high ambition, ulul himma, and be the best what you can do. Of course, in deen, but also outside of deen. But understanding that if it doesn't work for whatever reason, it's in your decree and it's khair. Sometimes you think, oh, I can't be a millionaire, man. You know, I'm so sad, I'm upset, or I can't reach that milestone. And you don't get that interview, whatever it may be. But then you realize, alhamdulillah, this is the qadr of Allah. And having that grounding, bro, when I understood that hadith, it's like literally you're bulletproof. You can walk through life like, alhamdulillah, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's not, it's not. And when the non-Muslims don't have this, it's a sad life, man. It's a really sad life.
I don't know how they go through life like that, to be honest. How do you function?
It's one of them ones, subhanAllah.
I understand.
Going on from that, inshallah, in regards to the Islamic side of things, one thing maybe you've heard, and I've heard this as well, from maybe the elder generation, the people that studied Islam in a more traditional sense, going to the masjid, they would say, oh, you know, these people, they're going out working so hard and they're trying to earn the money, and this guy's got a Lambo, or this guy's got a big house. But we as believers, we have zuhud. You know, we shouldn't care for this world. We're here as travelers. You know, there's many hadith you can state. So how do you reconcile, obviously, between that and working hard and earning money and providing for your family, that kind of stuff?
You know, sometimes I ask myself, where did that even come from? You know, if you look at the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu time, like, most Sahabas were doing well for themselves, right? And they all had ambition, they had businesses, things going for them, right? So I don't know where this modern day, and you know, sometimes the reality is it stems in victimhood, right?
Yeah.
Like whenever you see a Muslim that has a victim mindset,
Mentality, you know.
the easiest way to kind of make yourself feel at peace is, yeah, this world's not for me. You know what I mean? I'm just a traveler.
Yeah.
Nah, that's all fitting. I don't want to go down that path. The reality is though, Muslims, in order for the Muslim ummah to thrive or the Muslim economy to start booming, Muslims have to, you know, tighten the midriff and say, you know what, I need to go and I need to start working. I need to start this and I need to do this. So most of the young generation kind of get it. But the older generation, I feel like they're just stuck in their old ways, and the reality is sometimes you can't change them. And maybe sometimes, you know, when you couple Islam and like limiting beliefs in your own mind and you doubting your own self ability, it's very easy to resort to Islam. It's very easy because you can say, you know what, as Muslims, you know, money doesn't even matter. Money is the root of all evil. As long as Allah gives me my provisions, I'm happy. But then sometimes you have to tie your camel and actually go out there and take action. But I think the young generation have the opposite problem, which is they are dunya focused, but they're away from the religion. Because one of the biggest problems that I'm starting to see coming is money, right? I don't know if this is a sign of Day of Judgment. I think I read this a few years ago, but money is going to become very abundant. Like younger people, like nowadays we're seeing genuinely, like there's so many ways to make money. It's silly. Like for example, I live in the UAE, right? Sometimes I hang out with some guys, 21-year-old kid telling me, yeah, last month I made like 85k a month, you know, like 85k last month. You know what? It's like, that was a bad month. And then it's like they're so desensitized to the idea of the money, but they're very immersed in this dunya. So I feel like with younger people, like teaching them that Islam also does influence you to be motivational and aspirational, it will kind of help rein them in. Because I feel like if you get one side saying you shouldn't really be chasing this dunya, people that have a victim mindset, clearly, right? And you got someone that's ambitious, what are they going to do? They're going to look there and be like, don't want to be like that guy. And what are they going to do? They're going to start going to these Western guys or non-Muslims. And that's why I always tell people, as a Muslim, you should take pride in being ambitious, whether that means in terms of your health or your mindset or even wealth, right? Because that showcases to younger Muslims, you know what? As a Muslim, I'm praying, I'm taking care of my family, I'm working hard on my business and my work, I'm in good shape, right? All of that stuff, what does it show them? You know what? Muslims are really that guy. But if you look at younger Muslims nowadays, they think, oh yeah, Muslims, they're not even that ambitious. And the sad reality is, I hear it sometimes here and there, but they say, oh, everything's haram. You know what I mean? They say everything's haram. Oh, what? I can't have a credit card. That's what someone said to me recently. He said, oh, I got to cancel my credit card now. Bro, everything's haram. Like, what can I do, right? So if you don't show them a way, you don't pave a lane for them, they're going to resort to what they see on the internet. And the secular notion that's pushed amongst young people is get money and then get women. So they're going to kind of go down that path. And then maybe, if Allah allows them, they may come back to the deen and say, but if Muslims are constantly having this idea of, we shouldn't chase this dunya, bro, you should get this dunya, you should hold it in your hand, not your heart. That's what they say, right?
I was going to say.
So that would just be my answer. I always tell people, like, if you hear that, tell them, just shush, that's it. Yeah.
And even going on from that, so you mentioned there's a lot of figures out there that have a lot of money and they're more on the Western side of things, meaning a lot of them are non-Muslims, or even if they are Muslim, as we sadly see with Andrew Tate and others, that Islam is, you know, very dangerous for the people and the statements they make. So do you think there's a lack of Muslim role models in terms of that entrepreneurial space, or people that make money? And what's your thoughts on that? Because I see a lot of people there's a lot more online right now, but what do you think?
It's very it is loaded again, because I feel like there's two sides, and I've analyzed this as well. Some Muslims, the reality is they are capitalizing on the current situation of the economy. So I've also noticed this, but I'm willing to just kind of let it slide. But there's Muslims that use the deen to sell.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, right? Especially the younger Muslims. They're very bold with it as well. So they would use the word of Allah to kind of propagate that, okay, you know what, Muslims should be ambitious. And then they'll say, buy my course $9.99 at the back, right? But definitely there needs to be a lot more in terms of the Muslim entrepreneurial scene, or just anything, some sort of ambition, right? Because I feel like if you look in the West, Muslims are the most lagging community. Like, we are so far behind from most other communities, right? And even the ones that do have money and are wealthy and doing well for themselves, they would rather stay out of the mix. They're like, you know what? I don't really want to mingle with these kind of people. So I think the upcoming generation is going to make a difference. But then again, I feel like you have to also have the right mindset and intention, because I'm going to tell you guys from experience, when you start earning a certain amount of money, fitna comes in just like that. Because you start having this, like, as a man, one of the, especially in the West, right, if you take Islam out of it, one of the biggest validators for a man is money. The moment a man gets money, that's it. You can get access to whatever you want. And women, most times, it doesn't matter what you look like. The reality is, if you got money, khalas, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So that genuinely destroys people. But if you don't have Muslims that are doing well for themselves and also do have money and are on deen, the younger generation are just going to look up. They're going to see one guy saying, don't chase dunya. One guy saying, I just made 30k last month. He's going to go there, bro. Because at the end of the day, money does solve most people's problems. Yeah.
It does make life easier.
Yeah, sah.
Yeah, of course. Nah, subhanallah. That's very true. And it's interesting. I think there's a void there, definitely. Like you said, I see certain brothers that are just pushing, that get the youth, earn money, then buy this course, do this, do that. And then there's, in the middle, it's difficult to see people that are doing well, but at the same time, that you can't judge, obviously, everything their intention is with Allah. So you can just see by the way they're pushing certain things. Yeah. No, definitely. Alhamdulillah. Another thing is, again, adding to that is, you might have certain brothers that are pushing for the dunya, like Hassan spoke about earlier. They may be going through different paths and they're trying to focus, but at the same time, the deen is there as well. So how do they, do they compromise the deen? Do they put it on par? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
You know what is, I don't have a concrete answer for this.
Okay.
Because as you guys said, you never know someone's intention. That's the reality, right?
100%.
But me, I don't know. And some of these guys are mutuals with, some of them I see on the internet. But it's very hard to see in between those lines, right? If someone's wearing a mosque hat and going to the masajid all the time, but then he drives a Lambo and he's got a nice little watch and he says, I made this amount of money by the will of Allah. But the main core, or the main thing to take away from all of this is, if someone is propagating a message that you can make money fast, that should be the signifier for you. That should be the nail in the coffin for you. I always tell people, money doesn't come fast unless something happens in there that you have to scam someone or lie to someone or say something that you don't actually do. No money actually comes fast. And nowadays I see Muslims saying that, oh, like in 3, 4, 5 months you can start making 10k a month. That's become like the benchmark right now, right? The reality is, people don't even think 10k a month is a lot anymore, right? They don't. That's what it's become. They've become so detached from reality. But the main thing that, if any young person is watching this, to understand is, if someone's telling you can make X amount of money in a short amount of time, that should just be the red flag. That should just tell you, you know what, move away. Because the reality is, even if you do make that money, did you really cultivate skills to actually make that money, or you just follow the little shortcut or cheat code? And from experience, like, it just never sustains. It never stays. You would rather actually put the groundwork in so you can build something that is sustainable long term, rather than trying to cut corners. Because I speak to a lot of young kids, man. Most of them cut corners till they end up getting cut. It's just the reality. I speak to so many people, they do so many courses, boot camps, and they try 1,000,001 things. And I see him 3 years later, he's still in the exact same position. And I'm asking him why. He goes, yeah, bro, man, you know what, I tried it, but it didn't work out. But I tell him, you know what, if you genuinely set out a 5-year plan, people focus too much on 6 to 12-month plans, right?
That's right.
I want to get here next year. But the reality is, if you guys can all do this yourselves, look back 1 year ago till today, nothing much has changed. Unless you had a random year, right? One of those blips where you say, oh, a lot happened this year. But the reality is, most people's 365 days are exactly the same. Nothing much changes. Maybe a plus or minus few kilos on the weighing scale, right? That's about it. But look back 5 years ago. Definitely a lot's changed, right? 5 years ago, a lot has changed. If you take away the pandemic, right, a lot has changed in 5 years. And that's what people should aim for. Like, if you're someone that's 20 years old, even 25 years old, because I'm 25, right? In 5 years, I'll be 30. 30 is the new 25 in my head. I don't really see 30 as being old. But imagine being 30 and you set out a 5-year plan. You set out what you said you were going to do mentally, physically, financially, wherever it may be, and you actually achieve it. In those 5 years that you sacrifice, Allahu Alam, it may set you up for the rest of your life. But if you sacrifice all of these, or if you try to shortcut all of these 6 months and 12 months, the reality is you end up wasting 5 years as the byproduct, right? You start this 6 months, then you start do this for 12 months, You do this for 6 months, 12 months, you blink and then 5 years is gone. And you ask yourself, if only I stuck to that one thing. So the best advice always is to create a 5-year plan rather than 1 year plan, because in 1 year or 365 days, you don't change that much. It's not noticeable.
Makes sense. When you said about boot camps, because there's a lot of IT boot camps, and I don't know what other, like maybe sales and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you think they've got any substance to them? Do you think they're actually worthwhile in your experience?
I think boot camps are better than courses. So I know a few people that have boot camps. I currently have a boot camp myself.
Your own.
Yeah, for tech sales. Yeah, it's going well, alhamdulillah.
Okay.
I think boot camps are more tailored, more personalized, and more intensive. Courses are more do it yourself, as in you buy my course.
Okay.
Couldn't care less what you done with it.
Yeah.
Money's in my account, right?
Yeah, of course.
But in terms of a boot camp, it's more of a cohort based, and you see them week in, week out.
So more accountability.
Yeah, it's accountability. You genuinely track their progress, and the metric is if it's obviously like a boot camp, like software development or something, the metric is whether they get a job or not.
Okay.
So you actually have something to work for. Whereas all of these other like mindset or forex or all of these things, the reality is what is the metric?
Yeah.
So with boot camps, and also a career is more achievable for most people. If you put your mind to it, you can genuinely achieve any career you wanted, as long as it doesn't require a hefty degree like medicine or something, right?
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to know how to be a software developer, the reality is if you sign up to a boot camp and you really do the work, again, you have to ask yourself a question: is the boot camp the problem or you? You know what I mean, right? So if you put the work in, week out, there's no way that you can't get an interview at least, unless it's qadr is not written for you.
Of course.
And then from there, once you break in, khalas, it's only up from there. But boot camps are way more intensive and way more personalized than courses. But I think definitely, if anyone's thinking about it, boot camps are definitely worth it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something about tech sales. Obviously, you're in that field. When you say tech sales, excuse my ignorance, but what is it exactly?
So software as a service. So it's a software that exists on the cloud.
Okay.
For example, like Zoom, Netflix.
Yep.
All of these are like software as a service. So they exist on the cloud itself. So you are essentially working in the sales department for those companies, and it's B2B. So you're working between businesses.
You're pitching to people basically.
Yeah, but it's between businesses. So you're dealing with like C-suites, high level executive people in a company, and trying to see how, or if we can integrate our solution into your existing product.
Okay.
And that's pretty much what it is. So you're just liaising between businesses, primarily for softwares that exist on the cloud, so internet access.
Okay, mashallah.
Barakallah feek. Another one, we spoke about Islam in regards to the Muslims' ambition. Another question I want to ask you, what do you think about culture? So obviously I come from Asian culture, you come from different culture, other brothers here from different cultures as well. So how do you think that plays a big part in a Muslim's ambition or their upbringing or just their connection with money?
Yeah. I think most ethnic minorities are pretty similar. I think I give credit where credit is due. The Asian community is more stronger than most communities I've seen in terms of wealth and aspiration, primarily because you guys migrated to this country way before most other people,
I'd
right?
agree with that.
Like the 50s and the 60s, right? It's not even to do with a head start. So in terms of culture, I think it definitely varies a lot from whatever culture you've got, right? But generally, I think the older generation, especially because I've never blamed our parents once. They came from poverty or some sort of crisis that forced them to leave their country. Because if you ask most parents, did you want to leave your country? They'll be like, nah, there was just something going on there. I had to leave, right? So for them, it was more survival. But the byproduct of that is sometimes they just don't want to learn. And I think as the generations go on, things are going to get rewritten. But as of now, in terms of culture, I think culture is ultimately the thing that makes Islam look bad sometimes. Because even if you look at marriage, if you look at wealth, if you look at just general upbringing, the blurred lines between culture and Islam is what makes people think Islam is bad. But Islam is perfect. Muslims are not, right? So in terms of culture, it definitely depends. But in terms of aspiration, I just feel like for a young person that's watching this and you live in an ethnic minority background, parents are not really understanding you, you should actually put more effort in making them understand. So one thing I usually tell people, especially young kids, is, which they love to say, is my parents don't listen to me. okay, parents are not meant to listen.
Everyone
to
said that. Yeah.
I mean, no, but the reality is, right?
Yeah.
Like when I was dropping out of uni, there was no way I would have sat around my friends and said, my parents don't want to understand why I'm dropping out of uni. They shouldn't understand. It's just the reality, right?
Yeah.
Like if for them is the fear of the unknown. Parents love to stick, especially the older generation, they love to stick to what they know.
Yeah, it's a
Because
safe
that brings them comfort. Yeah, it's comfort, right? If I know my kid's going to university, that's more comfortable than me saying, "Oh, my kid said he's gonna try out a business," and they don't want to hear that,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. That's right.
But you as a kid, I think because you are more culturally educated in terms of the West, you should actually take it upon yourself to go to your parents and say, "Mom, Dad, this is what I'm gonna do." Give them actually the benefit of the doubt. Give them a roadmap, because how many kids actually sit down with their parent and show them from A to Z what it is that they're doing? The reality is kids are very soft nowadays.
Yeah.
There was even a quote that I was reading not too long ago. They say the more comfort you are brought up in, the less tolerant you are to hardship. Which is why most kids nowadays, like with the whole mental health pandemic and all of these stuff, kids are just becoming soft because they've been babied. There's no reason for you to wake up in the morning because you've got shelter, you've got food. And so when it comes to aspirations and you go into your parents now, as soon as your parents says no, you take it so emotional and you take it so personal. You're like, oh, my parents don't want to listen to me. And then you go outside and you start telling your friends, and your friends are obviously going to validate you, right? So to kind of rewrite that, I've always told people, genuinely sit down with your parents. If they don't understand, they're not meant to. You have to just keep reminding them of your mission and just stay laser focused to prove them wrong. Because think of that story that you're painting. My parents didn't understand what I was doing. I stuck through with it. I worked hard, and now they're my biggest supporters.
Exactly.
But kids don't want to go through that. They expect their parents to just say, "Oh, you want to drop out of uni? Oh, yeah, go for it." Like the white people can do that. White culture can do it because they've kind of exercised the different alternate realities. But for our parents, university is the holy grail for them. Like that's the thing for them.
Yeah, of course.
And if you don't go to university, of course they're not going to support you. But you just have to prove them otherwise.
Because they automatically think university, okay, guaranteed degree, guaranteed job.
That's it.
And guaranteed stability.
Yeah.
So you can provide for your family.
So
You know, because we didn't have to do, because a lot of our parents and stuff like that, you know, they came from, well, they're still obviously doing work that doesn't require much expertise and stuff like that. So they want for their child what they didn't have the ability to have.
yeah,
You know, so they think, okay, khalas, why are you doing something that's completely, it's far fetched. It doesn't, like, it's just airy fairy. You're going to end up doing what I'm doing for you now, for your family. So
yeah,
just stick to the safe bet.
it's true.
But also the opposite is that a degree doesn't mean anything really nowadays. You know, in a lot of the degrees that people do, which I'll ask you a question about as well, I feel as a person that they don't really come with much substance. Apart from what you mentioned about medicine and stuff like that, but like, do you think everybody should be going to university, and like, even if they've got the ability to pay for it without any riba and all that nonsense and stuff like that? Do you think there should be an option where people should, you know, a degree is a good option, because maybe I want to become like because people do like maths and stuff, and you're like,
Yeah.
what does it mean?
I'm not against university.
Okay.
I never have been, but I think the system is corrupt in a sense where if you realistically like get yourself out of the box and you actually think, most young people don't even know what they want to do.
That's right.
But then you force them to go to university, right? I think that is where the fundamental issue is. University should be something of like self-discovery. You wake up one day or after a few years, you're like, you know what, I really want to get into this.
Okay.
And in order for me to get into this, I need to take this certification.
Okay, makes sense.
So it becomes more optional. But if you make it like a contingent thing, like you have to go to university, I think that's where the issue comes mainly. But nowadays, the day and age we live in, there are so many things you can do that is an alternative to university. You can do degree apprenticeships now.
Okay.
You can do apprenticeships. There's maybe some sort of scholarship programs out there, but people just don't want to look. I think that's just the harsh reality. I don't blame parents. I don't blame anyone.
Yeah.
Young kids are just so soft nowadays. They don't want to go on the internet and research. They would rather be spoon-fed. Like, I know so many kids nowadays, their parents are still researching what they should do on the internet, and the kid's like 20. You are more tech savvy than your parents, but your parents are the ones on the laptop with their glasses on researching what university is my son going to go to. And that's just the sad reality we live in. So to kind of answer your question, I think there's so many ways to make something out of yourself that doesn't require you to go to university. But I think people nowadays choose university out of comfort, because university has this prestige attached to it.
Of
That
course.
if someone says, "Oh, I'll go to university," it kind of doesn't put any pressure on them because they're like, oh yeah, you got 3 years. After 3 years, then think about what you're gonna do, right?
That's right.
And I think that prestige element around university is actually more detrimental to people than anything else.
Yeah.
Because how many people actually go to university, go to every single lecture, do every single assignment to your best or your best ability, right? They don't really. You go to university, they've got social clubs, they've got all of these events and all of these little enrichment programs that you can go to. And the reality is you just end up wasting time. You just about scrape by. And then your self-discovery phase starts after university. So then you come out of university and you're like, oh, should I do a master's? That's what some of them say.
Really?
It's so sad. Like I was telling my sister this like 2 months ago. I said people do masters nowadays just because they don't want to face the reality of having to go out there and find something for yourself.
Real world,
So in order to just stay in that incubator
Uh-huh.
of education, what do? They just say, I'm going to do a master's. And there's nothing wrong with masters. But if you don't actually really want to do a master's based on some logical thinking, saying, you know what, in order for me to get here, I need to do it.
Okay.
If it's not the case, then why are you scared? And that scared nature and being risk averse is destroying young kids. And people don't actually understand how bad it is.
How do you think that started though?
What
do you think the main factors are for?
Why so many people are risk averse? I think school. I always blame the schooling system. I'm not a conspiracy junkie.
Okay.
But schooling was made in a specific way in order to make you just think like there's only one linear way of thinking, right? So if you go to school right now, I said this even on the previous podcast, there's only one right answer. You're not allowed the freedom of thinking, when in reality, if you look at most concepts or most things on the planet, there could potentially be multiple answers.
That's right.
But in school, the problem is you're taught that you can do your GCSEs, then your A-levels, then you go to university. That is the metric of success for most people. Yeah. But what about the outliers? Let's say you are a creative genius. I don't know, maybe you like creating things with your hands or you like doing things on a computer, and modern day education is not for you. You're bad at maths, you're bad at English, you're just bad at a lot of things. You are outcasted from society.
That's right.
And I think because kids are forced to or are not allowed to think outside of the box, creativity is kind of dimmed amongst young people. The issue with that is then when they start to grow older, they attach their success or their ability towards like education or like university and stuff. And if you talk to most people, they're like, oh yeah, bro, I failed my A-levels. And then you ask them, okay, like that doesn't really mean much. Like you can really do a lot of things with yourself. Nah, man, I'm not that smart, bro. Like,
it's the end of the world for them.
Yeah, it's the end of the world. And that, especially throughout your formative years, like imagine your main teenage years, you've convincing yourself, I'm not capable of doing these things. You kind of then go throughout your 20s, your 30s, you believe those same things all over again. So in terms of being risk averse and kids being very scared, I think definitely schooling didn't prep them well. Like even if you were to go like a couple centuries ago, there was a lot more mentors in society. So one thing I was reading recently is there used to be a lot more mentors in society. Like when a kid becomes of age, like 9, 10, 11, 12, he would go with his father, go out hunting or do something. I'm talking a while ago, right? Or there was the local blacksmith. The kid says, I want to become a blacksmith. I want to learn how to make the finest sword. The kid's mentor becomes the blacksmith. Nowadays in society, we don't have mentors. We just have teachers. Teachers that just stand there tell you, this is the right answer. If not, you've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And the lack of mentors in society has created an environment where kids are really trying to figure themselves out, but when they look on the internet, they see so many conflicting opinions, so many conflicting ideologies, and they don't know where to start, they don't know where to finish. That's why one day you see a kid that's on Deen, the next day you see him, he's making music, and then sisters, the same thing. One day she's wearing hijab, next day she's not. Is because there's so much conflicting ideas around them that they've never actually sat down and thought about, what am I actually doing? So I think there's a lot more reasons, but mainly it's because of the way we were raised, especially in the West.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because even like with, like, while you're talking, I was just thinking about like, even to do with like marriage as well. People won't consider, especially they won't consider the boy for their daughter. Oh, he doesn't have a degree.
Yeah.
He may have a business. Oh, that business may might flop, or it might be like just one hit wonder, or it may just be good for now and then. But he doesn't have a degree.
Yeah.
And he also doesn't have a master, so like this guy's a joke. He's probably not very, intelligent. So I think that cultural, stigma is also attached to it, even until now. I believe. I know. We've got relatives that are multimillionaires. Didn't even got any like GCSEs. Forget about A levels, like multimillionaires, but even they looked, oh, I wish I would have got a degree. Why? What's the point?
Yeah.
You know, so I find that very strange as well, to be honest.
It is interesting. Another question I wanted to ask is, we spoke more in terms of the outward and individual different people and society. I want to speak a bit about you now, Dino, inshallah. So in regards to, was there like a specific spark, or what, since a young age, was there something that was put into your mind to pursue, instead of the normal 9 to 5, or instead of the normal, university path, all these kind of things? Was there a spark that made you think, I want to do something different?
I've always had something in me. I know I kind of go against that, but I've always had this superiority complex idea within me, and I feel like if you look at most people that are that made something of themselves, they always used to bet on themselves. Even though I was defeated multiple times in life, I always knew in the back of my mind something one day is gonna give, and I think that kind of made me go, but made me continue. But in terms of your question, in terms of the spark, I think, I don't know, I just got dealt a lot of bad cards.
Okay.
And to kind of give you like a brief story,
Yeah.
I've been through the victim mindset. The reason why I talk about it a lot is because I was there. So I remember even in 2019, before I actually dropped out of uni, I deferred my year in university and I was going to therapy, right? And that was the first time in my life where, now looking back at it, I laugh. It makes me laugh every time. And I know I shouldn't, but I was going therapy for problems that weren't actually problems. It was just because I couldn't sit down with myself and ask myself, what am I actually doing? What do I actually want to achieve? And also there was the pressure of university, because I was always an academic student. I think that was maybe my problem. I got good GCs and I got good A levels. And because of that, my parents are like, it's a no-brainer, go to university. I then went to university, and that was the first time I realized in my life, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't really like it. And I was doing optometry, by the way, in case you guys don't know, it's opticians, glasses, which was a good degree, by the way. But throughout that time, I just didn't have no motivation. I lost my drive. And then because of that, and because of the pressure of, like university's not going well, I started creating loads of problems in my mind. And then I was not sleeping properly, and it kind of just makes it's like a cascade of events, right? And then after that, you tell yourself, okay, I really need to go see someone. The reality is you do not. And because of that, and I went through that for like a year, and then obviously I dropped out of university.
How far along in university were you?
So I was in my second year.
Okay.
So I was in my second year of university, and I dropped out. So I did the first term of the second year, and I didn't complete the second term. But to kind of go back to my point, I just had a bad victim mindset. And one of my problems, because I kind of know myself well, is if I have problems, I like going outside and socializing more.
Okay, interesting.
So, and a lot of people are like that, surprisingly.
Sometimes it's the opposite, though, isn't it?
Surprisingly, it was cope for me to kind of get away from my problems. I would go outside, go to the lengths of just calling random people on my phone
Really?
to just say, do you want to go here? Do you want to do this? And the maddest thing about that is when I would come home, I would be even more sad or even more depressed, right? And coupled with the idea that I wasn't really practicing that time as well, so like it kind of all makes sense, right? But then I was going therapy, and whilst I was with the therapist, one of the things that dawned on me is I actually know my problem, but I'm just sitting here listening to someone that's explaining something that I already know. That's genuinely what I was thinking when I was sitting there, right? Because it's not like I have some sort of undealt trauma from young or something. It was just things that were just made up in my mind. So then I just quit. I said, you know what, cool. But I was still like, I had the victim mindset. I was still doing wrong things for like a year. And then when I dropped out of university, I think that's when there was genuine pressure on my back. Because I'm the oldest son in my house, right? I've got 2 younger brothers. And it was a big deal. To the point where my parents didn't tell no one for like a year. Like no family, no one knew. It was not that it was a shame, but they were just like, they just don't want to tell no one. But it just put so much pressure on me. And that made me stress even more because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. But all of that, like the point I'm trying to drive home is all of that, everything that I went through genuinely taught me that A, there's obviously more to life. B, like that adversity sometimes forces you to think outside of the box. Like I'm sat there as a 21-year-old, 22-year-old in 2020, And I'm thinking, what am I gonna do with my life? Because university gives you like a linear thinking. I graduate, I go do my pre-reg for my optometry, then I become an optometrist, and I'm gonna get married. I'm gonna have a kid.
Everything's set.
I'm gonna have a kid. And you know, sometimes that linear thinking is actually bad, because life can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like you can do whatever you want with your life, right? But that limitation was just gone. But I was in a really bad situation. So then that went on for the whole of 2020. Like my parents generally used to check on me. Oh, why don't you go back to university? That niggling idea all the time. Oh, why don't you go do this? Why don't you go do this course? I'm like, nah, man. I feel like I'm gonna try these things. And then I was on the internet every single night. I still remember. I was just searching different things. And that uncomfortable feeling kind of just made me keep going. And then 2021 was a decent year. I had like a social media marketing agency which failed, but it taught me a lot of things.
Was that just on your own? Was it
yeah, so it was on my own, and then I did copywriting for a bit, which went well. So I was just trying out different things.
What is copywriting? Just like
it's written sales basically.
Okay.
So you know when you see like adverts on like a billboard or like a sales letter, someone's written that, but it's written in a way that is salesy. It forces you like some psychological bias. All of these things are in there. So it's basically written sales. So I was doing that for a bit, and then come 2021 ending 2022, I then found out about tech sales, and then I got into tech sales. And then up until that point, I was trying different things. As I mentioned to you guys, crypto, all of these things. I was even wanting to get in Forex at one point. But then I told myself, you know what? Just sacrifice a few years, work on this one skill, just keep going at it. And then it worked out. And then now all the lessons that I've learned taught me that instead of cutting corners and wasting time trying this and trying this, just stick to one thing and just see it all the way through. And that's just about it. So that's pretty much been my journey in a nutshell. Yeah.
Why did you choose optometry?
Again, no idea.
Really?
Yeah, and that's the problem. So I realized that after the fact, I used to ask myself, why did I do this? And you know, the rationale, the thinking behind that is, funnily enough, my parents used to take me to a tuition center, as most young kids go, right? And there was someone that was working at the tuition center that was an optometrist. Never heard of an optometrist in my life. What did I do? I went on my phone. I started searching how much do optometrists earn, and then I saw a good number, and I said I'm gonna do that. But the reality is, I didn't actually research into what it was. I just heard that it was opticians, glasses. Yeah, it can't be that hard.
Okay.
And then I just went into it. So there was no actual thinking process behind it. It was just more so do something that's going to give you a job or something.
So I'm guessing then there's no regret about leaving that.
I didn't even regret it when I dropped that. I never actually thought to myself, I think I made a bad decision. No, never. I think for me, one thing about me is, which my siblings are actually not like me, is I like taking risks. I've traveled a lot by myself as well, so I do a lot of solo traveling.
That's different.
From young, like from 19 years old, just traveling by myself. So for me, it's never been a thing where I need to be around people or I can't do things by myself. I go out to eat, I go to the gym by myself. Like, I think that's helped me a lot. Okay. And now it's like, it's so normal to me. Sometimes if someone says I'm not coming, I'll go by myself. It doesn't really affect me. And I think that characteristic helps me a lot to kind of navigate through life.
Just sort of gathering from your own life, obviously you mentioned about that you've been, very academic, and you've always had some sort of drive to keep you going.
Yeah.
But I find as though, like, compared to other people that I've seen and, just in life, most people are not like that. Do you think that that's because you're different to them, or is it that they don't, like, they can never be like you, they can never have that ambition and stuff like that? So they should just stick to whatever they were doing, their 9-to-5 job? Or do you think everybody's got the ability to transform into having those things?
That's a very good question. One thing that I acknowledge is everyone has a competitive advantage. Okay. I'm never gonna tell you, oh, you could do exactly what it is that I'm doing. Maybe it's just a natural given talent, right? Yeah. Like you can see in sports, some people are just way better than other people without trying as hard. But you should never discount also the idea that you can work hard. I think most people, the reality is, and it sounds so simple, but when you prioritize your health, I think for men, especially men, a lot of men, if they were to prioritize their health, groom themselves, look presentable, get in decent shape, a lot changes. And there's a lot of transferable skills in there, right? Discipline, structure, routine, organization, that if you were to, let's say, be an overweight person to come to a slim person.
Yeah.
So the best practical advice I always give people is fight yourself and go become a fit person, or go work out, or go do something that challenges your body.
Okay.
Because when you challenge your body, you actually learn a lot of things about yourself. How do you react when you face adversity?
Okay.
The amount of young kids nowadays that don't even go through any challenging thing in their life.
That's right.
You sit at home, you order food. Your mum makes you food, you play games. You go to school, you get driven home, or you get dropped home. You don't actually do anything that challenges you in your day-to-day. So if you're not challenging yourself, you're actually not growing. Because you have to actually stress yourself, whether that is physically or mentally, in order to grow.
Okay.
So I think most young people, it's not that they cannot do it, it's because they've not exposed themselves to difficulty for that long. Because and obviously it may come from childhood, but the more you are able to just do hard things, like I have this concept called you have to do one hard thing every day, doesn't matter what it is.
Okay.
That kind of builds up some sort of routine and momentum in you, so then whenever it comes to doing something massively challenging, you've kind of built up some sort of appetite, so you can then complete that thing.
Callous mind.
Yeah, that's all it is. Like the calloused mind idea, where you constantly push yourself, beat yourself up, whether that is physically in the gym, combat sports, whatever it may be, right? Or going on a run. Do something that challenges you every single day.
Okay.
And the more calloused your mind becomes, you would actually be able to take life on as you should. Like our parents, right? Our parents have gone through so much hardship.
Yeah.
Like my parents come from Somalia to the UK. It may not be physical, like working out in the gym, but having to figure out where to stay, leaving your family behind, like not knowing where you're gonna get payments from.
Yeah.
Those all callous your mind. And then if you look at our parents now, like little minor inconveniences, oh, like this and this happened to me, or this person wants money from me. They're gonna stress, but they're not gonna sit in their bed and say, my life is over. And that simple discipline comes from being exposed to hard things. But in this Western world, how do you have to create hard things? You're not given hard. Like if someone's born in a war-torn country, they don't need to create hard things. They wake outside and they probably see someone running with a Kalashnikov or something, right? So you have to kind of create hardship in your life. I think that's one thing I always tell people: create hardship in your life. Go do something that challenges every fabric of you, your whole DNA, something that makes you cringe. Go do that thing and see how you react. The more you learn, and you only learn about yourself in difficulty, by the way. Whenever you go through a hard period, you actually learn, okay, this is how I react. And then once you kind of learn yourself, you can then see the areas you need to improve on. And then your life only goes up from there.
Okay, subhanAllah.
No, 100%.
Have you always had, like, just going from that, have you always had like a routine? Or is it something that you've developed into? Because you've always said all about that you've been good at, like academically and stuff like that. So I'm assuming a lot of it came like, obviously from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but is it something you've always had a routine, like you're studying, your fitness and this, that and the other, or is it since you've...
I said this to you last time, if you remember. I don't have any routine in my life. I have an obsession disorder. It's not a good thing. I would never advise anyone to focus on it. But for me, the way my brain works is I can only focus on one thing at a time.
Okay.
Let's say I need to build this thing out, business out, whatever. Nothing matters to me. Sometimes the byproduct of it is relationships take a hit. You kind of distance yourself from people. But that's the way that I've always completed things. Even during my A-levels, like people that used to know me in college would know. I used to go college. As soon as the bell rings, I'll go home. I wouldn't hang around. I wasn't those guys that used to hang around. I started hanging around in uni. Maybe there's a common theme there. If I start hanging around, it goes left. That's maybe why I dropped out, right? But in college, people know me. I used to go in, out. I used to come home. My parents came and vouch for me. Sometimes I'll study for like 7 hours. 5, 6 hours, 7 hours.
After college?
Sometimes I would say like 2-3 hours after college. On weekends, especially like closer to exam season. Obviously, I wouldn't do it all the time. But I would always just be obsessed with it. And I didn't even like it. One thing that a lot of young people struggle with is they think you have to like something in order to do it. Discipline is doing things irrespective of how you feel.
Like it,
right? So for me, A-levels was just grind. This is just a mission. I have to do what I have to do. And then I got there in the end. And that discipline that I actually developed then taught me anything that I put my mind to, you don't have to like it at the beginning. You just have to do it because you know what the reward is after. And that reward after, if it makes sense and it actually has good benefit, then khalas. Just put your mind, put your head down, keep working. And then that's it. So in terms of routine, I don't necessarily have a routine. Even till this day, I sleep when my work is done. I wake up whenever. Obviously, if I have work and stuff or I have to do something, I wake up. Normal day, my body wakes up like 10 a.m., 9 a.m. That's pretty much it. So I don't really have a specific routine.
Okay.
What was at the beginning of your journey, what were your ambitions at that time, and have they evolved over time?
So it depends. Do you have like a time frame, like when?
So like just say you left uni at that time, and your parents were thinking, what's going on? You're trying all these things.
Yeah.
At that time, what was your ambition? 'Cause that's a big thing, leaving uni.
Yeah.
What was your ambitions at that time? And then maybe a couple of years later, how did that change? Maybe when you start getting to tech sales, did that evolve at that time? Or is it ever evolving? Or have you got something in your head already?
Goals are always evolving. Goals always evolve as you evolve, right? So that time was just to find something that makes me money, I guess. That was my goal that time. And I think that was fundamentally wrong, because thinking about I need to find something to make me money, anything can make you money, right? So at that time, I was even working a retail job. I was working in a petrol station, a co-op. And pretty much I was earning money from there. I was trying to make money here. But you see all of that idea of trying to make money here, trying to add things together, it actually sacrifices a lot of your time.
Yeah.
So that time, my goal was, you know what, I just need to find something to make me money. And then as it evolved and I started realizing I'm wasting a lot of time, I then realized at the end of it, if you find something that you become good at, so a certain skill set, money is always the byproduct, right? So I always tell people, the more you increase your value, money is always byproduct. If you're able to be someone very resourceful and you have you can solve problems in the market, the more good you become at doing that thing, the more money that naturally comes in. So kind of reverse engineering the process. Instead of focusing on money, focus on value. How can you become someone of value? How can you provide value?
Yeah.
And then when you ask yourself what is value, is whatever skill set you have. Whether you are someone that's good at public speaking, good at selling, good at programming, good at caring or helping people, then double down on that, become good at that thing, become proficient at that thing, and then as you level up, money just comes in. And then that's pretty much the formula that I follow now. So if anyone's watching, genuinely, whatever skill you want to learn, just start off with that thing, become good at that thing, learn as much as you can. Find even people. A lot of people don't actually go out of their way to find people that are doing what it is that they are doing or want to do. And I don't know why. I feel like the idea is always strange to me. If I know you're doing tech sales, let's say you're a senior, you've been in the industry for 10 years. There is no way I wouldn't speak to you. There's no way that I wouldn't ask you for advice. But a lot of young people, I don't know if they shy away from it or I don't know, they're egotistical or something and they don't want to, but that actually helps a lot. So whilst you are on your journey of becoming proficient at that skill, find people that are good at what it is that you do. And when you reach out to them, obviously don't leech off them. Try to give them some sort of value, so they can actually then give you something back. Or if you can't provide them value, sometimes I would say just pay them. Like I think 2021 till now, I've had a few mentors. I'm heavy on if someone has information that I know and they are credible. I would, if I don't have anything to offer, I would just rather pay for your time, learn from you, because knowledge is more valuable than money. Money is abundant, right? Money is everywhere. To be fair, so I've kind of detached from the idea of like money being something that we should hoard. Because that's the poor mindset if you think about it, right? Money is just a vehicle, is a tool to get you from where you want to go to where you want to be, right? So yeah, that's pretty much all I've been doing. And I think now, definitely the journey I've been on, the goals have changed. It's become more bigger. I think my aim is to kind of influence people, inshallah, obviously, and that's the kind of mission I'm on. Slowly, of course, whilst I'm obviously not leaving myself deprived. Obviously, I'm focusing on myself. But I feel like a lot of people, man, they need help, and that help, the way they get it, it's bigger than me. But if I'm trying to do my part and other people are trying to do their part, that joined force will help a lot more people.
Do you currently have a mentor at the moment?
Yeah.
Do you currently have a mentor at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Why did you choose that particular person?
Resonated with them. Yeah.
On a personal level, or?
I wouldn't say personal, but we have a lot of similar traits.
Okay.
So those similar traits, he kind of gets me. Kind of gets what I'm capable of, where I am, and so on and so forth. But now it's become more of a friendship. It's not really like it started off obviously professional, but now it's become more of a friendship. Yeah, so it definitely works.
MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. I was going to add to what you said earlier, or ask you a question. So how do you define success currently in your life? In terms of the dunya, obviously the akhirah, if you want to touch on that as well. But in terms of how do you define success for you at the moment?
Success for me is doing what I want to do. So if I do, for me, the way of how men work, men are purposeful, right? If I'm doing what I want to do, I think that's number one, that's ticked. Secondly, I try to look after my family as much as I can. I think end of the day, they are joint, or they are joined to you by the hip, whether you like it or not. Even if I don't live in the country, I have to kind of go out of my way to check up on them. But success right now in my life is just doing the basics, doing my work, focusing on building my business on the side, working out. I try to detach from social media as much as I can. Even though I create content, like since I've been here, I've barely created content. Like I've tried to immerse myself back into real life. So and it's nice.
Yeah.
I feel like, you see, for example, all of this EDL stuff. I am going on a bit of a tangent, but you know, all this EDL stuff, all of this rioting stuff. One thing that a lot of people don't understand is social media negatively programs your mind.
Yeah, of course.
Like, I live in London, for example. I don't know how it is like in Leicester, but every time I walk outside, I'm loving life. Every time I go back home and I go on my phone, it's as if London's burning down or the UK's burning down.
That's right.
But the reality is, when I look outside my window, I don't see anything. And that disparity is why I always tell people, spend more time in real life than on your phone. Because your phone would genuinely make you think the world is ending. But when you go outside, you see people walking their dogs, people smiling and laughing and talking about, oh, what a lovely day. And that's what I've been prioritizing. And I feel way better. Because before, as much as I would create content, sometimes I would just get caught up in what's going on here and what's going on here. It doesn't affect me, but it's taking up your mental energy. So for me, success right now is genuinely just focusing on what I have going on. Obviously the Deen aspect as well, and just staying out of the net, man. Just living life. Yeah.
How would you say that you personally balance your your entrepreneurship and also your Deen? How do you balance the two?
So the way I balance it is, I think the Deen ties to everything. So Salah, obviously, and my mom is heavy on all of these things. You know, my mom's someone that doesn't actually care about money. Doesn't. She just says Allah's the one that gave it to you. And she says make sure you do adhkar all the time. She said she'll always try to remind me. Like, my mom is someone you could talk to her about the world. Her first or second sentence is going to be something to do with the Deen. So Allah barak, obviously, in that regard. But I think wherever I try to go, because as humans our iman is always fluctuating, right? Like my mom is someone that always just keeps reminding me. If I'll tell mom all my days, I did this today, or like, this is what I achieved, or this is what happened, she'll be like, make sure you do that, make sure you pray salah. Like, it's never, oh wow, let's go fly here. No, never. So I think my family values are very solid. So my parents, Allah barik, the way they brought us up, especially my mom, has always been rooted in Deen. Like, my mom couldn't care less about anything. Like, if your Deen is lost, my mom genuinely doesn't care like whatever you've got going on. You could bring her £1 million. If it was out, if it was an impermissible way, she would just tell you, get out. So my mom is very, so I think in that regard, the Deen aspect, I think my mom's the one that always keeps me grounded. Yeah.
And have you got, you mentioned about 5-year goals and stuff like that. Have you got a 5-year goal for what you want to achieve in your Deen as well?
Yeah. So for me, in terms of my Deen, because it's kind of hard in the UAE, because there's not much classes, right? I'll kind of have to travel. So the UAE, in case people don't know, because there's an abundant amount of masajids, finding classes is actually very
consistent,
hard.
Yeah.
Like bro, there's like 100 mosques. In my area, there's 3 mosques. One there, and one behind me.
Okay.
And it's like you go to them, and because the people in the masajid, like the imams and stuff, they don't really speak English.
That's right.
So even if there are classes, I wouldn't really understand, right? So I think right now, I'm trying to get back into revising the Quran. Because I finished the Quran 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago. That was my biggest achievement them times.
Oh, my bad.
But I kind of just slowed down on it massively because life gets in the way, teenager, hormonal, all of these things, right? But that's something I've definitely wanted to get back into, like a routine of revising Quran regularly. So I think when I go back, that's something that I've already got written down.
Okay.
In terms of the 5-year goal, I think call myself an official Hafid. because right now it has an asterisk next to it. I just claim it, but I don't think I am. And also learn more about the deen itself, because I think one thing that I'm kind of falling into, where I'm very honest, is the more I learn about the worldly things like marketing, sales, all of these things, sometimes you prioritize that more than the deen. Because the deen is always spirit, it's always internal work. Whereas all of these things is tangible. If I learn this about marketing, I'm going to see this result. If I learn this, I'm going to see this result. Right. So that I can see with my own eyes. But spirituality is always internal work. And internal work leads to more success than external work, right? Because it keeps you grounded. So I think for me, keeping myself spiritually grounded is something that I'm working on. And having an obsession or obsessive personality trait doesn't help either. So if I'm like got something like a goal I need to focus on, that's just all in. So now slowly I'm starting to peel back. So when I go back to the UAE, inshaAllah, I'm gonna start taking a few classes. There's a few brothers I know in Dubai that I've got a few classes. I'll be willing to make the travel. So yeah, that's what, take more classes and focus on the Quran again.
Alhamdulillah. Now I have one penultimate question before we go, inshallah. Are you happy?
What do you define as happiness?
Contentment.
Yeah, I would say I'm content. Happiness is temporary.
Happiness.
But content, definitely. I think it's two reasons to kind of add to that. So the deen aspect obviously helps, but because I've seen both sides, right? When I used to practice, but I didn't have a purpose, I was never happy for some reason, right? So I feel like as Muslims, this is very important to take away. You could be someone that is praying all your salah, staying away from sin, but as a Muslim, you should always be purposeful. Even in this dunya, you should always have a goal. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to actually get out of this world, right? What plans do you have for your family and yourself? I think without that, you would still be more content than someone that doesn't have spirituality. But there will always be a little hole there. Like not having something to wake you up every morning is a man's nightmare.
To push you.
It's a man's nightmare, right? Yeah. So I think the two things is deen and just having purpose. I think that's what makes me content. Because every morning I wake up, it's like, you know what, I've got a mission. Like the mission can't stop. I have to continue. And I think now I'm in a position to say that, whereas before it was like I would wake up in the morning and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what am I gonna do today? And then that whole thinking about it kind of drains your mental energy, and then you just sit there and you're like, I just wasted my whole day. So I think being purposeful and coupling it with the deen is impenetrable. Like you can't beat that duo.
Not to get sidetracked, but one thing we have in Leicester, I'm sure in London, I'm from Loughborough, which is close to Leicester, is this drug pandemic right now. A lot of people getting into drugs, a lot of people becoming runners, and that kind of stuff, quick money.
Yeah.
And someone asked me the same thing in terms of, asked me a question like, what do you think will get the youth away? Why do you think they're doing all this? And I answered exactly what you said. Number one is deen, but number two is purpose. If the kid doesn't have a purpose or aim to go, what to do, these little things are going to make it easy for them to be sidetracked. If they don't have deen, they've got no one to say it's wrong. So I think them two things are very important. Deen and purpose. And the third thing is fitness as well.
Yeah.
Because you have to have that. I always say that to any young men, young brothers out there. You need your deen. You need some sort of purpose, some sort of guiding. You need to be fit. Yeah. And if you can clock them three things at a young age, alhamdulillah, you're going somewhere. And you won't be easily sidetracked.
So that's true. Even with the whole drug thing, I don't want to go into it too much, but a lot of young kids is because they were demoralized by the fact that they couldn't pursue like normal education, like conventional education, right? So I think giving them alternative pathways from the beginning, because you know back in the days, right? Like I think people like wanted to sell drugs and all of these things because they were brought up in harsh environments, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's not really the case.
No.
Yeah, you get a kid growing up in a normal area ending up becoming a drug dealer or a drug consumer, right? So you have to always ask yourself a question, why is that the case? Because most households, the reality is, I don't believe any kid is innately bad. That's one thing that I've understood. Even if you look at these guys on the streets that are doing the most craziest crimes, right? Like, for example, the whole stabbing thing that happens nowadays. Most kids that are doing these things, they've not got a bad bone in their body. And that's the sad reality. And that realization only comes when they're in prison or obviously not when they're killed, but when they're in prison, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to the point where you have to give kids like the flexibility to kind of think for themselves and do what it is that they feel like is right. Because I feel like if you support a kid in terms of his dreams, whatever, maybe even wild, I want to become a footballer, right? If you show them some sort of support, they will stay loyal to you forever.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
they know, you know what, even if it didn't work out, that guy, you know what, he was always supporting me. And that makes them more receptive to you.
Yeah.
So then you become an influential person in their life. And that's what I've understood about a lot of young kids. Whenever I look at the younger generation nowadays that are doing drugs or consuming drugs, they all look like good kids to me.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, it goes back to the point of, if you shut down all of their curiosities and I want to try this and I want to do this, and you say, no, you have to go to university, then it then funnels down to not having purpose. Because if you don't go to university, you're just sat at home, you don't have purpose. And if you don't have purpose, shaitan, that's his playground.
Yeah.
And if you shut them down, they're still going to do it anyway, but just...
That's it.
You want that door for them.
Yeah.
They say, obviously, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. A famous quote. And one of my friends said something very powerful. MashaAllah, he's old now, he's plus 30. But he was telling me, you know, when he was young, he used to love football like anything. And he goes, one of the saddest things is his dad never once came and watched him play football. And he goes, like, that's one of the memories. He goes, I love my dad and he's amazing. He's done this, has done that. But he never showed any interest in what I love. And he goes, if my dad came one time just to watch me play football, that would have changed my world back then. So it's important, even as elder brothers, elder cousins, or, you know, inshaAllah, when we become, you know, fathers, that you do, you know, step inside your child's mind and you support them in their dream. Maybe they're not going to become a footballer. Maybe they're not going to become whatever. But if you show them that support, they're going to love you even more. And then they're going to talk to you about what they want to do in the future. And if it's the wrong thing, that you'll advise them. So I think that's very, very important, that you have that balance, that you support them, but at the same time, you guide them at the same time.
Yeah.
No, definitely. So want to add anything?
Oh, I think that's...
Okay, inshallah. So what we'll do, as we normally end with, the Glad Tidings podcast, alhamdulillah, is do you have any glad tidings to the youngsters, to the people watching this podcast right now? There's one glad tidings you could give, what would it be?
Don't give up on yourself.
Yeah.
I know it's cliche, but with what's going on in the world right now, I think men, especially men, are giving up on life, giving up on marriage, giving up on careers, and ultimately they're giving up on themselves, whether Muslim or not Muslim, right? So one thing I would say is, doesn't matter how bad or hard your life is, always give yourself another chance. So whatever you're addicted to, whatever you're currently doing, if you have no career, give yourself one extra chance. Clean slate. Go start something new. Paint a different picture for yourself, right? And I think it comes from a personal place, but I've also seen a lot of people give up on themselves. Like, if you look at society in total, like, and you talk to most young kids, it's like they're soulless. Like, you look into their eyes, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just living. That's how they speak, right? So it comes from giving up on yourself. Doesn't matter what life throws at you, you only lose when you give up on yourself. So to kind of go back to my point, don't give up on yourself. Doesn't matter how hard your life is. Pick up a piece of paper, write down everything that's bad in your life first and foremost, and then write down everything that's good in your life. And most times, the good things in your life, you're probably not aware of, because you don't think about the good things that are in your life, the ni'mas that Allah's giving you, right? Definitely. And then start all over again. Give yourself a clean slate. Start all over again. That's what I would say.
Barakallah feek. We'll end it there, inshallah. May Allah bless you. May Allah preserve you. Amen. And may Allah accept all that we do. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Barakallahu feekum. Until next time.
Alhamdulillah. You've just watched a podcast by Mubashirun called the Glad Tidings Podcast. Our aim is to spread the da'wah as far as possible and to connect the general Muslims with the people of knowledge, inshaAllah ta'ala. In order to do this, we need you guys to subscribe, like, and share, inshaAllah. Also follow us on Instagram through the links in the bio. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward each and every one of you. Jazakumullahu khairah.